Hello, and welcome once again to the David Messiah YouTube channel, where our watchwords are to teach and to build back up the kingdom of Zion. My name is Sidney Thomas. I'm the founder and moderator of this YouTube channel, and welcome once again for joining me. The title of this video presentation is I Am BaYuda and Proud the song. I am BaYuda and Proud the song. Because those of you who have been following the channel would remember that there was an earlier presentation with that same title, I Am BaYuda and Proud, but it wasn't a song, it was a recitation of that ballad that the Most High had moved me to compose in response to the discussion that was going on. I think Lisa Cabrera, our beloved sister, was responsible in that regard. That discussion about the names or the terms by which we should be called, and the Most High had guided me to suggest that it should be BaYuda. BaYuda. Because we shouldn't be calling ourselves black, we shouldn't be calling ourselves African American or African Caribbean or any other variation of that. And we even though we are Negro, literally, meaning those who are of the root of Nega David, Nega being one of our words, a Hebrew word that means essentially king now. Not literally, but essentially king, because it's a praise title. It means he who is watched over by the Most High. And that was the sense of the phrase, David is the apple of God's eye. That was the sense of that. He was Nega David, the apple of God's eye, the one watched over by the Most High, the one beloved by the Most High. And as a praise title that was used and used all the time, it came to mean king. It's the same with the other praise title, Malek or Melech, which also does not literally mean king, but it has come to mean king. Its literal meaning being our brother, Melech, Amalek, our brother, the king. So you use that to refer to the king is sufficiently and is going to come to mean king. But the literal word in our language for king is Re or Ra or Ras or something of that order, meaning one who is the head of something or the root of something or the chief of something. And that title is actually in the title given to Rastafari. Ras is chief or head or even king. So that's the literal king. But Nega came to mean king. And in our language, if you introduce that letter Resh, adverting to the root of something, which is how you get Negro from Nega, it is referring to the root of the Nega. What is the seed line? What is the tribal root from which the king comes? So those who are Negro are literally those who are of the tribal root as Nega David, which is the tribe of Judah. So literally we are of the house of the tribe of the seed of Judah, BaYuda. And at BaYuda, that prefix Ba means the house of, essentially. Okay, and it is not only those who are of the seed who will be in the house, all those who join themselves to the sort of original house, which is the seed line, the children of Judah, can also be part of the house. Okay, so this was the idea, to go back to a term, and I say back to a term because we were also called back in the day BaYuda, House of Judah. And it was that word that was the basis or the origin, the etymological origin of the word Buddha. So because the original Buddha was BaYuda. Okay, and the Most High was saying, look, we need simply to go back to that basic word, which is like a very simple sort of replacement. Wherever we would call ourselves black, we call ourselves BaYuda. I am BaYuda. Wherever we would call ourselves African American, we say I am BaYuda. And by the way, it also cuts across all nations because we were scattered into all kingdoms of the earth. So wherever we now find ourselves, we may call ourselves BaYuda. And the word can also, because it means the house of, it can be expanded to include all those who are not necessarily of the seed of Judah, but who join into the house of Judah. Because in this latter day, when David, the David Messiah, is being raised up to establish the throne of David, it would be the southern tribes and the northern tribes all together again as one. And so we would all, whether you're of northern tribe or of one of the southern tribes, you would be BaYuda, of the house of Judah, because the house of Judah would enlarge itself to embrace all those who now fall under that restored throne of David. So that was the essential idea, and it was also to distinguish us from the so-called Jews, because they have now misappropriated the word Jew to refer to themselves, when in fact they are not even of the house of Judah. Now, whether they are allowed to join as Gentiles is entirely another matter. That is certainly a possibility. It's not for me to say otherwise. That is a matter for the Most High. But they cannot be part of the house of BaYuda while claiming to be Jewish, which is essentially, well, the Most High calls it a blasphemy, and who am I to say otherwise? In the book of Revelation, chapter 2, verse 9, I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. So there can be no replacement theology. You can join the house, but you cannot join the house while essentially trying to replace the true inheritors of that house. That is called replacement theology. So that is not going to be accepted. That is not going to work. And scripture is clear in that regard. It's also there in the book of Daniel, chapter 11, verse 14, where there's a reference to those who would take up or presume to take up the vision, I paraphrase, but shall fall. So that is referencing the so-called Jews who are rather, well, they're certainly not of the house of BaYuda. And I may get into who really they are later on in this talk. But I want also, and he's guided me in letting me to know that the prophecy of Revelation 14, verse 3, is also present here in this task that he has given me, and which I have tried to fulfill, which is to sing it, to make a song of it. Okay, and Revelation 14:3. Those of you may remember that that verse, which would seem a little bit hard to understand, where it says only the 144,000 elect will be able to sing that song. So it was referring to some specific song that only the 144,000 could sing. And when you think about it, why should it be that only the 144,000 elect could sing that song? It's not as though the 144,000 are going to all be gifted, with the talents of our best singers and musicians. No, that can't be it. So there has to be some other reason. And the other reason is what I'm now suggesting to you now, this whole idea of replacement theology. Because it's not only the Jews who have sought, in effect, to replace us in the sight of the Most High at that, as though they could pass one over on the Most High. And certainly, I give them credit for at least trying to be obedient to the law, where we've certainly failed, no doubt about that. But it isn't a question of, well, you are doing such a good job now of obeying the covenant that now you become us. No, doesn't work like that, not with the Most High. And the replacement theology notion is there also with the Roman Catholic Church. Because the essence of Catholic theology is that somehow now all are now covered by the promises of that set apart covenant that the Most High made with only his set apart chosen people. So it's as though the Most High didn't know what he was doing the first time. And the fact that we failed, certainly we failed, we disobeyed the law that he gave us to follow. And he turned his back upon us, but only for a moment, sort of giving perhaps those who are of the Christian persuasion, certainly the Catholic persuasion, and with a small c Catholic. In other words, it's for everybody, for God so loved the world, that kind of theology, that now it's for everybody. No, it is not for everybody. I'm not saying that all others are excluded per se. But what I am saying is that they cannot replace the ones with whom the Most High made the covenant in the first place. It was a set apart covenant. And already in Exodus chapter 12, verse 49, he allowed for the mixed multitude that came up out of Egypt, led by Moses. Those who were not of the seed, they were allowed to become part of that house on the basis that they must adhere to the same law as the children of Israel with whom the covenant was made. So they can join in, no doubt, physically, but they cannot come in as a replacement. They cannot come in now as the Pope, for example. And I'm sure Francis is an Edomite. No, it doesn't work like that. So any kind of replacement theology, whether it is of the Catholic variety, Roman, or whether it is of the Jewish variety, is not acceptable in the sight of the Most High. And that is what is being adverted to in the prophecy of Revelation 14, verse 3, because the 144,000 elect are all to come from 12 tribes of Jacob. That's who he made the covenant with. of the seed. And that's there in Book of Revelation, chapter 7, where the list, they go down the list as to who 12,000 from this tribe, 12,000 from that tribe, and etc., adding up to 144,000. I'm not discounting those of the other nations, the multitudes who can then also try to join in, but not as a replacement. They may join in as it is indicated, in Ezekiel chapter 47, verse 22. Join in physically. It is a grafting that is necessary. But in any case, it is certainly not as a replacement. And Islam also teaches a replacement theology. They have the idea that because Israel sinned, that somehow it automatically, all the promises and the rights under the covenant, somehow magically shift over to Ishmael. I mean, this is laughable. And I'm not going to hold it back. It's laughable because there's too much of scripture in too many places and too many books that make it clear that the Most High has not forgotten his people and will not forget his people. Certainly it's there in the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 30, verses 1 to 3. And it is there in other places in Jeremiah. He said, can a mother forget her suckling babe? Well, only if a mother will forget her suckling babe will the Most High forget the covenant that he made with his people. So how could Ishmael even begin to think that they could be a replacement? And they've gone further than that. They accuse us of being infidels and unbelievers and etc. And yes, it's not for them to judge, but they're probably right because we did sin against our Father. But that doesn't give them leave or the right to take our place, and it certainly didn't give them leave or the right now to enslave us, which is what they had some sort of theological justification for why they could enslave the infidels, the kafirs, the unbelievers, or whatever other name they want to put upon us. So this is what is happening now in Revelation chapter 14, verse 3. Because the reason why only the 144,000 could sing the song is because the song is a profession of identity. It is not a profession of creed. It is not a profession of belief. It is not a profession of any kind of theology. It is not a profession of any kind of blamelessness before the Most High. Because we've all sinned. Okay? We've all sinned. As David sinned grievously before the Most High in the matter of Bathsheba and her husband. But it doesn't change the identity. So when the song says, I am BaYuda, as a professional of identity, this is what the 144,000 can sing, and the others of the mixed multitudes and etc., they cannot. Now, I mean, the 144,000 will form the core of the kingdom of Zion, and being only a core, politically, administratively, and etc., doesn't mean that that is the entirety of the kingdom of Zion. So yes, it will expand to include whoever indeed wants to join at that point. But they cannot make the same profession of profession of identity at this time as the 144,000 will make. Right. So this is prophetic, and and he made me to understand that very clearly. Now, what is also kind of riding on this is okay. The throne of David being restored means that the house of David is also being restored. It's not only BaYuda, it is BaYuda, the house of David. And he led me to know and wants me to say now that the house of David today is to be found in my land of Trinidad. My land of Trinidad. And it is kind of an irony of circumstance, because if I am that David Messiah, and he led me to know that I am, and he ordered me to say that I am when I issued that audio letter of demand upon the Catholic Church in the state of Israel. So I had to announce myself. So it means I am certainly of the house of David, certainly from this land of Trinidad. And if it's one thing about David, was he was musically gifted. And I'm here to say I don't think there's another people on the planet that are as musically gifted as we here in this land called Trinidad. And as I say so, I am mindful of all what a contribution has been made by our Negro brethren of the United States. And indeed, they have, gone ahead in the eyes of the world as being number one in gift in that regard. But knowing that, I still will stand and say that my people right here in this land of Trinidad are the most gifted people musically on the planet. There's none more gifted than we are. But here's the irony that here I am that David Messiah, and I can't sing. Well, I mean, I told the father that, look at me, I'm not that one to sing. He said, is anything too hard for me? And I'm thinking, well, God, what melody would I even use for? Because I have a script. But if you're going to sing a song, you also need some kind of a melody. So don't worry about that. He will download something into my head at the time. And that's exactly how it happened. I didn't have to try this, scratch that, try another one, scratch that, copy from, because I did think, well, what about the ballad of the New Orleans, for example? No, it is what he would give me. And so when I sat down to do it, I asked him, look, you give me this thing because I don't even have a clue. And it just came, it flowed. It didn't mean that I got a voice. I still don't have a nice velvety baritone as Whitley Phipps, far less a nice basso profundo as Paul Robeson. Okay, nor even, we have a lot of singers, calypsonians. Some of them with better voices than others, but all with a gift. And I'll give a couple of links to one, Lord Shorty, who is highly gifted, creative, talented. He's passed now. I may give another one or two other links so Those who are not familiar with the huge talent pool that we have in this land might have a sort of a sampling of what it is on offer, so to say, from within the house of David, right here in this land. And as I say so, let me just to kind of help prove the idea that we are the most musically gifted. We have produced several different musical art forms. It's not just, well, so have the Americans, the American Negroes, no question. So I'm not even going to try. I'm not a musicologist, and even I think a musicologist would be quite unable to make any kind of proffer of proof that these people have produced more music than another set of people. But if there's any kind of a measure such as musical output per capita, in terms of quantity of music and also in terms of different genres of music, I would offer Trinidad as one of those. Okay, because it's not only the sort of talent pool we have per capita. It's also the range of genres that we have produced. Instrumental as one sort of a particular, because we produce steel band music. Okay, this is like the equivalent of David's harp. David invented instruments. Well, we invented the instrument called the steel pan and invented a musical art form to go along with the steel pan. Okay, and the organizational framework now for giving effect to that musical art form. So I'll give a link to some steel band music that helps to make that point. And we produce not only calypso that everybody has heard about, but soca, something we call parang that people haven't heard about, and something called, well, there's so many. I mean, soca music, the fusion with certain kinds of Indian instrumentals and so forth, which Lord Shorty was famous for. Um, it's just, I can't even, bring it all to mind right now as I'm speaking. But it's huge. And I really would invite a challenge for any other people on the planet that think that they have greater musical output on some kind of metric than the House of David right here in Trinidad. And I asked him, well, what about the rest of the Caribbean? Should I include them in that House of David? He said, no, Trinidad. But obviously, we are closely related to all the other islands, from Jamaica and the Bahamas up there. Okay, Haiti certainly, and the Hispanophone islands as well. The Cubans, they have produced quite a range of musical art forms as well. So I'm not, as I say what I say, I'm not saying that to take away from anybody else, because we all BaYuda. But I'm referring specifically now to the House of David, which is a sort of a subset within the BaYuda family. And we are the inheritors of that musical gift that we know David to have been famous for. So the modern day equivalent of David's harp would be the steel band and the steel pan, which has gone global. Okay, it hasn't sort of, it's not a money spinner in the way of whether it even be rap and hip hop. Some of the output of which to me is execrable, but doesn't stop them from making a lot of money with it. But I wouldn't put those art forms anywhere near close to what we have been gifted with here in Trinidad. But that's just me, and I digress a little bit. Um, the main point there was this is a song he wanted me to sing it. I am by far not anywhere near close to even the 50th percentile of musical gift of our people here in Trinidad. But nevertheless, he had me to sing it. And so, it puts into sharp relief, well, what is it about the song that only the 144,000 could sing it? Well, it's not musical gift. That's not what it is. It is that the song includes a profession, not of faith, not of creed, not of belief, a profession of identity. Because the others cannot sing that. They cannot stand up and say, I am BaYuda and proud. Just as they could not stand up after James Brown sang what he sang, nobody else is going to stand up and say, I'm black and I'm proud. If you're a Chinaman, if you're a white boy from wherever, you're not going to stand up and say it out loud, I'm black and I'm proud. No. Well, the same applies to BaYuda and proud. It is a profession of identity. And it is a profession of identity that is unapologetic, that does not take away from any other identity. It is the same with, if you remember the movie series, The Godfather movie series. There was one character who was the consigliere. I may not be saying that right, but he was a sort of the legal advisor to the Godfather, Corleone. But he was not a Corleone. Michael, who had inherited from his father. I forget what the father's name was anyway. Um, and the consigliere, his name was Tom. Tom, I forget what his last name was, it doesn't matter. But the point is, he was not a Corleone. Michael said he shared no secrets from that consigliere. So he was trusted implicitly, but he was not a Corleone. He could not make that profession of identity. And it also meant that he could never become the godfather, because to become the godfather of the house of Corleone, you had to be a Corleone. Doesn't take away from that Tom, I forget his last name, of the character. So you are who your father is. That is your identity. You could become chief of that house, but you cannot become now godfather of the house of Corleone if that's not who you are. And by the way, this relates also to work that our beloved brother KMC History has been putting out, reminding us that the indigenous people of Western and Northwestern Europe were our Negro brethren. And all the ancient noble houses of Europe, if they were noble, their family crest would go back and you would see some Negro there. Well, a lot of them would have had the bangle, sorry, not the bangle, that ring, that earring, that golden earring, um, that sort of, token of identity would be there. But when you go to scripture, you realize that it was a servant in the house who, when given the option to leave, having served whatever time he was there to serve, would be given the option to remain and do so for life. And that anyone that took that option, they had to have their ear bored with a hole and that golden earring put in there. So to be carrying that earring is saying that you have opted to remain now in this house, of which you now are a part, but to which you were not born. So I think that is the original sort of sense and meaning of the golden earring. And those who were of the house didn't have that earring. But anyway, that's just an aside. Um, but it is relevant to the question of identity. That's why it is Revelation 14:3 says only the 144,000 could sing that song. So that is so okay. I've made that point. I had uploaded, I'd made this transmittal video in an earlier version yesterday, only to find out that there was some technical glitch and it wasn't recorded at all. I think it was trying to record off the, not off the microphone, but off, some internal source. And having made that error, what I put out, it was not recorded. There was no audio. So first, I apologize for that. But I'm saying that now to say, well, I'd gone into all kinds of other points. It turned out to be a 55-minute long transmittal video. I'm not somehow inspired to do the same again today. So I'm going to stop here. Although some of the topics that I addressed in my earlier version yesterday, I think are still relevant somehow, but over the course of time, those other ideas would be addressed. Some of it has to do with the earlier video referring to Russia being the king of the South, and their origin also as being Negro, and some other topics which actually now fail to come to mind. So I'll just leave it there and commend this song to you as essentially a profession of identity. I wish I had a better voice, and I will give links to Paul Robeson in particular. He's of an older generation, but he had a beautiful, bass voice. He sang "Old Man River," one of the most beautiful songs that you could imagine. It just keeps rolling along. Just a beautiful song. Um, And I'll just make this little point about that as I make reference to Paul Robeson. He's a communist, and he'd lived in Russia for a while apparently, and there he was lionized. He was treated practically like a king, which helps also to make the point of this blood kind of we have a saying in Trinidad, blood is thicker than water. So blood sort of attracts blood, and if you find yourself getting along well with someone, chances are you might even be blood related and not even know it. And I certainly have had that kind of experience. Sometimes you use just the timbre of a voice, for example. The beloved sister Lisa Cabrera. Just by her voice, I feel an attraction. I feel an affinity to her just by her voice. I know she's one of our people. And the same had happened to me with a sister I met in my younger days when I traveled the world for an international organization, the name of which I will not say out loud right now. And I remember meeting a sister from Fiji, and just by the timbre of the voice, I knew she's an Israelite. She's one of us. So sometimes, okay, you want to take population, DNA, this, that, and the other, and etc. But somehow, if you just listen to a voice and you listen to the spirit, you can make a determination that that has nothing to do with science, but it's probably far more accurate. I don't know if people are getting that little point. Anyway, so we were scattered all over the world, and you know, you could make a connection based on blood, and you don't even know it's based on blood. So Paul Robeson went to Russia, and he obviously made a connection with those people because they lionized him. Okay. So I made some remarks about that, but I'm not going to go into all of that again now. But I also wanted just to key off of that observation to say I am not a communist. I don't have any sympathy for communist, thought in its sort of godless manifestation. That was another sort of trick of Satan to get us, going away from that profession of identity that we um, that we now coming back to. But that doesn't mean to say I don't love my brother Paul Robeson. I'm not going to try to judge Paul Robeson because he was a godless communist. And I'm going to give some links to some of our Calypsonians. I think Mighty Sparrow is one of them, who in a lot of his behavior to me has been reprehensible. And some of his songs certainly, rub me the wrong way. But that don't mean to say I don't love my brother, the Mighty Sparrow, because he's produced some great, great music. And one of those, because, we live a life, I'm always mindful of King David and what he did with Bathsheba. It's certainly not for any of us to judge, because we've all fallen short. And if the Most High will forgive King David for what he did, not so much because, he fell for that. She must have been a beautiful woman. But he went so far as to arrange for the husband's death because he was a king. He could do that. And it would not even seem as though it's murder. But morally, it was murder, as the prophet Nathan had to let him to know. But Psalm 51, in its profundity and in its beauty, shows that the Most High can forgive even that. So it's a case of who are we ever to judge? So in one of the links I'm going to give, Mighty Sparrow kind of found God. Even something, an art form now called gospelypso, which is gospel music in sort of a calypso tempo. And the song I will give a link to is called Salvation. And it's a beautiful song. But he's extolling Jesus. I don't have a problem with Jesus, this white Jesus. I understand? But I'm not going to now condemn my brother because I have a beef with him having to do with a matter of profession of creed. Because we've been misled. One way or another, we have been misled. As soon as you join the Catholics, you're making a profession of a Catholic creed when the Most High constrained us to a set-apart creed. We don't get to change that. No matter how much the Catholics would wish that the same applies to all, when it does not. Yes, all may join the house, but the kingship is restricted to the house of David. The priesthood is restricted to the house of Aaron. And there are other kinds of restrictions. So they can't come in in a kind of a replacement ideology. No. So if he's there with wearing a big cross around his neck, I have a problem with that. But it is still not for me to say, well, I'm going to now turn my back on my brother, the mighty sparrow. No, his music is beautiful, is wonderful, and what arrangements now he makes with the Most High, or the Most High makes with him, that is up to him and the Most High. My point here is to teach and to build, and hopefully the word will go out to where, even with this song, as lacking as it might be as compared with what the mighty sparrow, if he was the one singing it, let me tell you, it would go far and wide. But it still might go far and wide, even with my with my voice that seems to come with a frog in the throat. You understand? But I have to teach. And I pray that all my brethren who may be misled, who may be coming forward with their iniquity, there's the stumbling blocks of their iniquity before them, how they deal with that is really not up to me, because in fact it is the Most High will deal with that stumbling block of iniquity that most of us seem to have been compromised with, because that has been the great plan of Satan. So whether it's that Catholic stumbling block, or whether it is that Islamic stumbling block, or whether it is that, Jewish stumbling block, because yes, some of our brothers who are Hebrew Israelites have taken up some of those stumbling blocks. They come with this idea that, the whole New Testament, what is one posted to the site, I would not even respond to him, because Most High said, look, I will deal with that. It's not for me to deal with that. Most High will deal with those who come with a stumbling block of their iniquity before them, seeking to inquire of me through my prophet. No, Most High will answer that. But I recognize it, because with the kind of very broad brush, I know they mistake her. That was one of the things I had to learn. It's not as though, I'm ignorant of the objections that could be made. But when you're being led by Spirit, you get an understanding that transcends doctrinal sort of narrow-mindedness. And yes, I had to struggle with this whole idea as to Yeshua and who and what he was. But I've been given the gift of Urim. And with the gift of Urim, the Urim was insistent. He's not the white boy Jesus that they have tried to foist upon us. No. But he is our, if you like, elder brother. He is the first amongst many. In the spirit, before he came, he was EAL. He's senior to Michael, who came second. Senior to Hillel, also known as Lucifer, who came third. And. All the other archangels also came along in their respective orders. And yes, he did come in the flesh. And he came in order to be that substitute to the Aaronic priesthood, because he also came to prophesy that the temple would be destroyed, not a stone left upon another, and the Aaronic priesthood would be scattered out. making it quite impossible to observe the laws given in the book of Leviticus, chapters 4 through 8, the law of sacrifice. So he became the temple, he became the lamb, and he became the priest of a higher priesthood order than the Aaronic order. And when you read the sealed book of Moses, you understand that Moses was dealing with Yeshua before Yeshua ever came in the flesh. And that Moses was of the priesthood order of the Son, also called now the priesthood of Melchizedek. And it was because he was of a higher priesthood order that he could ordain his brother Aaron into that lower priesthood order and provide a means for priestly intermediation. And priestly intermediation became necessary from the time that Adam fell in the garden. And the example of that is Aaron's own sons when they went into the Holy of Holies, waving strange incense in opposition to the law that he had already given them. And they were burnt up to a crisp like bringing dry paper to a candle flame, making the point that in our fallen state, which goes back to Adam, we need a priestly intercessor for us before we could come to the Most High, which was the entire point of the Aaronic priesthood. And if that's gone, we need something else that would substitute for that. And that was Yeshua. That's why he is the lamb and the priest and the temple. I mean, it's a simple concept, but if you now come with this broad brush stumbling block of iniquity before you, and you're doing some kind of, mathematical, logical sort of proof with a QED at the end, as though you're Euclid trying to prove the truth or otherwise of the theorem of Pythagoras, it doesn't work like that with Scripture because you're dealing with spirit. And in any case, a broad brush doesn't work because you could have truth in between the lies. And as my mother used to say, sometimes you have to pick sense from nonsense, because if you're raising children and they have their little disputes, they will come and this one is telling one story and the other one is telling the other story. And one is lying in part and truthful in part. The other one is also lying in part and truthful in part. You have to know as a parent, pick the sense from the nonsense. So it is the same. There's a lot of the New Testament that I wouldn't put any faith on. I wouldn't rely on a lot of it. But the essential truth of that of Yeshua as being that priestly intercessor has been made clear to me through spiritual means. It is not an exercise in schoolboy logic. And, using the same Urim and Thummim, I'd been led to understand that the book of Revelation is true. And certainly there's a lot of Matthew that is true, even though chapter 1, where they're trying to make that equation, between the virgin of Isaiah chapter 7 and 8, somehow with this boy child that would come. They're wrong in that. You just read the book to know that there's an inconsistency. But just because you strike out this or you strike out that doesn't mean to say that gives you even in logic, it doesn't give you logical cause to strike out the whole thing. They do that in the Western law courts. They say, look, if you find a witness has lied in one particular, as a juror, you are entitled, should you so choose, to throw out all of their testimony. Well, my mother had more wisdom than that because, yeah, a witness would lie on one thing if he considers that it's really not germane because he doesn't want to embarrass himself, he doesn't want to embarrass somebody else. So he might lie on something that is far from what is at issue in the trial. And anybody can see it's a lie, but that don't mean to say you're not going to disregard the part that is true. So you need to be more wise than that. You need to be more grown up than that. And that's the beauty about spirit, because spirit can come to you in different ways. You don't just have to rely on the word as it is given. I'm not saying to totally disregard the word. No, I'm saying the exact opposite. Rightly divide the word, but do it based on the guidance of spirit, not on some, precepts of logic which are not applicable in the circumstances. Anyway, let me not. So I say all of that to kind of come back to this 144,000 being the only ones to sing that song, because it is not a profession of creed. It is not an ability to sing at the pitch or with a velvetiness of voice that they all must possess. No, it is a profession of identity. And we are now at this stage when we're trying to rebuild Zion, where it is for those who are BaYuda to stand up and pronounce, I am BaYuda and proud. Say it loud. I am BaYuda and proud. And I hope that you enjoy the song as much as it has been a joy for me to sing it. And it was a joy for me to sing it principally because it was no pain. Okay, I didn't have to be trying this and trying that and scratching this and scratching that. It was a one take affair, guided, I hope, by the Most High, and it is now for Him to do with it what He wishes. All right, so with that, all praise, all glory, all thanks, all exaltation be unto the Most High and unto you all who may be listening. Shalom.